Hello, we're back with probably this video about this SPL that finished about a month ago, I believe. Because, well, there's not much more to talk about. I analyzed every game, and that was already a lot of work. But this is probably the more interesting one for the meta game as a whole. And we're going to look at some usage stats and see, one, if my old video about trends to watch out for SPL was at least partially right, which I cannot tell at all because I completely forgot what I talked about. But I remember hyping Etron up, and so there's that. We will look at Etron and a couple others, and then maybe someone else will be so generous to tell me if I got something right at least. Okay, so what? Let's start with the top five. I will say pretty much expected. These are the top 5 months in the VRs as well, right? The viability rankings. These are the first five. 100% sure. And Stan is probably in the top six as well. Like maybe this is not the exact order, but I believe it's this plus Rotom Wash. And I would say Trax. Latios, obviously, the best Pokemon in the tier. A lot of people will say that if you want your team to be taken seriously, it should have a Latios on it. I don't subscribe to that ideal, but I see why a lot of people say that. Latios is not only super strong offensively, but it also offers strong defensive utility, faster than the the fighters. It's quite strong, can recover, can check stuff like Rotom Wash. It's just a nice Pokemon to have. It's also immune to spikes, abuses spikes himself very well, and it's very hard to deal with for your opponent. So it's just a good Pokemon. There's not much about it. And number two, Tyranitar. Yeah. So the top three usually it's Latios, Tyranitar, Ferrothorn, but Landorus could very well be in the top three as well. Like these top four ones are all interchangeably as strong, and it's all like personal preference whether you would put either of them first or second or third. Tyranitar may be the only one who's a bit slightly different because it's not something you need to check, but it's something that checks a lot of stuff. So it's more of a glue that keeps the tier from imploding, I would say. Which Latios also is to a point, so I understand why a lot of people would put Latios first or Tyranitar first. Fair, obviously, fantastic check for a lot of threats. Very annoying as well. A lot of teams struggle just to switch into it. And add the spikes and maybe strong support moves like Thunder Wave, knock off Leech Seed, and you have a nightmare to deal with. Landorus is just a good Pokemon, and the meta is pretty. The meta makes some of its sets very good at the moment. Escaril, obviously, fantastic spinner, extremely strong offensive presence. So yeah, fair, and like this is pretty much the expected top six. Beyond the individual rankings, which are whatever, right? It's only like the sample size is small, and it's how should I say? It's a lot of best of ones among the best players, or well, alleged best players, and the best of one is also what it is. So the sample size is kind of small, but even then, the trends are quite obvious, right? We see extremely offensive metagame. Like, look at the top 15. Right, Scizor is always either Scarf or Swords Dance nowadays, so extremely offensive. Politoed, okay. Defensive Mon, Hippodon, defensive Mon, Celebi, 50-50. A lot less bulky Celebis around lately. I don't remember the exact numbers, but this SPL I would say half of the, maybe a bit less than half, but a negligible amount was Nasty Plot. So yeah, strong late game sweeper, strong offensive check to certain mons, even without super bulky evs. Terrakion obviously super offensive. Etran were mostly offensive. The only out of these 16 e-trans, I would, if I had to, let's say guess, because I don't really remember, I would say the most were offensive. Only a couple were defensive. Defensive e-tran is a bit of a weird one. It's good, but the meta is not kind to it at the moment. Dragonite obviously offensive powerhouse. Rotom Wash, let's say defensive. And the rest is all offensive threats. Okay, Ferrothorn, maybe not exactly offensive in the usual sense, but spikes and decent attack and hard to switch into. 50-50. Landorus is on the same, is in the same camp, right? It's not really an offensive threat per se because nobody uses like the very offensive Landorus anymore. Sword Dance, Rock Polish. Maybe someone used one of it throughout the whole tournament, but out of these 32, it was like 50% Scarf, 50% special defensive, or defensive in general, max HP, max speed. And this reveals a very offensive metagame, the top 15, which is most of the usages, really. If you drop just a little bit, the next 10 slots aren't exactly defensive either for the most part. Skarmory, okay, pretty strong defensive piece, so sure, Gliscor. Mostly defensive. We've seen mostly defensive, but a couple of these were Sword Dance and a couple were also Fast and Sword Dance, and they mostly pair with the more right below with Magnezone. Magnezone is hard to slot into as offensive or defensive mon. It's mostly really a enabling mon. Like it by itself, Magnezone is not really not really worth talking about, right? This mon is just is only there because it makes some other mons extremely strong, and or is a guaranteed remover to some of the most annoying mons in the tier. Ferrothorn mostly, Skarmory too. Yeah, Garchomp obviously offensive powerhouse, Reuniclus. With low Uniclus usage, and also several of these were purely offensive, right? We've seen, for example, Monai Week 1 using Life Orb, 3 attacks recover. I believe there were a couple of Trick Room ones as well, so mostly defensive, but this one is also great offensive presence. Keldy, obviously, mostly offensive. Jellicent, sure, defensive. Thunderous, quite offensive. Clef, okay, Clef is definitely a defensive piece. And then right below, we have even more extremely strong offensive pieces, right? Volcarona, Kiran Black, Conkeldurr, Latias, arguably one of the best supports for offensive teams because Healing Wish. Breloom, obviously. Then a bunch of defensive stuff, though. Fortress, Blissey. But in general, if you look at the top 25, it's like 80% stuff that's very offensive and actually quite strongly so. And then the other 20% is defensive, but some of them are there because you kind of have to run them. Polito, the prime example. If you run Rain, obviously you need Polito. There's no way around it. Either this one is not good, right? It wouldn't see usage without Rizzle. And sure, nobody would use Monix without ability. Why? Sure, but one thing is to have a strong ability, say Poison Heal, like Life Course, and the other one is having a Drizzle, which is a playstyle defining trait. And so, yeah, out of these, the only really defensive pieces would be Hippodon and Celebi in the top 50, and Skarmory. Everything else is Rotom Wash, I guess, yeah, sure. So 4 out of 15 are purely or mostly defensive pieces. Ferrothorn, I'm not inclined to put Ferrothorn as a purely defensive piece. This guy thrives on more aggressive teams, or at least you you don't want to run a too slow of a team with a Ferrothorn in it. Ferrothorn is great because it really helps you up the tempo of the game, right? You you place this guy who is very strong, very defensively strong, but also has enough offense and spikes, so your opponent is kind of forced to remove it as soon as possible. It's not like Skarmory, right? Skarmory, even if it comes in and starts spiking, unless your team is 6-0 by Skarmory, and as long as you don't mega let to spikes, you're like, whatever, I don't care. But Ferrothorn, you have to remove it as soon as possible, unless it has a weird moveset, or rather a moveset that doesn't bother your team, which is quite rare. Even if it's just, say, Spikes, Leech Seed, and Stabs, not a lot can of the top 15 can switch into it. You would have to drop down to, say, Reuniclus, and yeah, it's not like out of the top 20. Leech Seed, Power Whip, Gyro Ball, Spikes. The only real switch in here is like Skarmory, Reuniclus, and Ice Core, kind of. Everything else just doesn't want to switch into it. And that's part of why I would not consider it like a defensive centerpiece. It changes though, because on rain it kind of is more defensive, right? But even there, you often run a more offensive Ferrothor paradoxically, because you want to win fast, because rain, because your weather setter is this stupid frog. Right. And beyond the general offensiveness of the meta, which, I mean, Black and White has always been offensive, but it's gotten real fast. Like, it's always been real fast. But the past 2 years, especially, or the past year rather, I've seen really. The offensive structures have been optimized to a point where they're so. How can I say it? They're so. Optimized, yeah, I was looking for a better way to express it, but sure, let's go with optimized. They're so optimized that everything that's not super optimized itself gets rolled over in like 10 turns, which has happened it has happened this very tournament, by the way. Some people have just lost in like 5 turns, and yeah, maybe they dragged it a little longer, but ultimately it's very easy to lose a game very early in Black and White, especially in a meta like this one. The in previous years we had a couple of more defensive builds that were at least decent, if not outright strong, like the Ipod uncleffable squads, and those slowed the game down a little bit, and in general, they helped foster a more defensive metagame, or maybe something a little less explosive metagame, I would say, rather. But nowadays, these teams have become a lot more niche, one, and two. Even when you see Poclef, it's not the defensive variant anymore. It's mostly the aggressive, maybe the more balanced ones, rather. Right? Latios Dam, and then the Hippo Clef defensive core, which plays a lot faster and is, well, plays better into the current meta. That's it, really, because it's so offensive. What else can we see here? I mean, it's it's always the same Black and White, just, well, the same that's been in the past few years, but a bit more optimized. I was expecting a bit more Alakazam personally, because this one is very oppressive, but I guess I guess it's a bit harder when you can prepare and you can go off the fact that your opponent may or may not. Like, some people just never use Alakazam. So, for example, Dark Evian doesn't use Alakazam ever, and so that lowers Alakazam's usage by default. Other players almost always use Alakazam, say Monite, and that means that when Monite is against someone who will probably prepare against him, um, some people who are obsessed with prep, I guess this you don't want to bring your favorite squads in general, likely, because they will try to counter team you. And Alakazam, I mean, it's not easy to counter team Alakazam squads, mind you. They're very oppressive, strong, probably the best in the meta, but still, you can tech against Zam to a decent enough point where the Zam will not be extremely annoying, only partially annoying. And obviously, it's also a matter of how you play the game, but um, these are factors that really play into how popular Amon is in a given tournament. One that's so isolated, like SPL. You have, again, people like Darkivion just don't use Alakazam. And or for an example from last year, when I was helping Monai last year on the Raiders, we were up against Zokuru. Okay, Zokuru was subbed in. He wasn't the main black and white player of his team, but still, you know, people like Zokuru will never bring Alakazam. Since these players exist, you you can imagine why Alakazam doesn't see that much usage, and those who really like Alakazam will be a little more squeamish about bringing it because prep and obviously you want to be a bit more varied in what you bring to a best of one. Like that's just it. Um, Mons like Alakazam especially, like it's not that hard for Alakazam to feel flat during a game, right? Whereas someone like Latios or Vandalus will always give you value. Alakazam a bit less so, especially if your opponent builds their team in a certain way. A lot of more Excadrills than I expected, and also very high win rate. I don't know. I mean, I'm glad about this because Excadrill is a cool guy, but I wasn't expecting Excadrill to pop up this much. And especially, again, this win rate is very high for something that's been used a third of for something that's got 33.33% usage rate. Having a 56% win rate, that's crazy. Like, look at Latios win rate. Latios is the most used mon in the tier, and it still manages to get a higher than a half percent win rate, like more than 50%. That's also crazy strong. Like Tyranitar and Landorus and Ferro, as you can see, struggle a lot more to win games. But Escadrille, Starmie is on the same boat. See, also Starmie, very high usage, very high win rate. Like these are kind of outliers. Generally, the more Pokemon is used, the higher its usage, the closer to 50% the win rate gets, no matter how good or how bad they are. Obviously, mirrors happen, and obviously these mons are great. They get used a lot, and so they just win a lot because they're good. And if when they lose often, it's because your opponent also has the same on, right? So it usually tends to normalize slightly below 50%. Tarantar and Landorus are the easy examples here. Um, yeah, so nothing else surprises me too much in the top 10. Maybe Dragonite is a bit high, but I will blame Darkvion again for this one. That guy has like 80% Dragonite usage. Well, I mean, I don't blame him. Dragonite is great, but come on, man. That's a bit extreme, don't you think? Usually you want like Dragonite. Has it been used in anything but Hyper Offense? No, I don't think so. Maybe in a rain team once? Who knows? It ran quite popular this year, 11th in usage. That's a bit surprising. Not much has changed regarding Heatran. I don't recall what sets it was mostly used as. I mean, it was mostly Balloon, a lot of Magma Storm, some Fire Blast, Taunt, often paired with Magma slash Fire Blast, so the same old offensive set. We've seen a Subtoxic one, which got gifted a game because someone, not naming names, hardened Glice Corona Lava Plume and got burned, and not only Gliscor nuked the enemy team, but also it was the only thing stopping Itran from just winning. And so, well, that happens. But that was only used once. Special defensive, I don't think it's been used at all. Special defensive Itran is a bit of a weird one, and with all the Alakazam, not really a great pick. Terrakion, strong, and this is reflected in the win rate. Terrakion, very strong on, almost 70% win rate, while being the 11th most used one. Some people think Terrakion is broken, not in the sense that it should get banned, but in the sense that it is very strong and you should use it a bit more often. And, well, the stats would back their argument for sure. Look at this. This is almost 70% win rate. That's insane. And it's got some mirrors, because without the mirror, as you can see, it's 75%. So yeah, this is an interesting one. Good mon, good mon. Celebi, sure. Hippodon, very aware rate. Mm, not not much to argue here about Hippodon and its win rate. Hippodon is a strong one, and it enables some interesting team compositions. Um, so And also, if you look at the top 10, look at this. Latios, okay, if you're special defensive, unless the Latios is specs, you don't care. Tyranitar you don't care, Landorus you don't care about, Ferrothor you do care about, but usually Hippodon teams have serious Ferrothor switch-ins, unlike, say, Tyranitar teams, not always at least. Escadrille you don't super care about, a little bit, because Worse Dance Earthquake will destroy you. Starmie you do care about, to a point. Jirachi you don't care about. Alakazam, lately we've seen Grass Knot usage on Zam drop just enough for it to be less concerning for Hippodon to face an Alakazam. Though obviously you still don't always want me to go for that. Uh, these are all tiny shifts that help a Pokemon like Hippodon, right? When the dominant Alakazam set is Life or Grass Knot, Hippodon, you cannot just slap Hippodon on a team and get 70% win rate. But as soon as the Alakazams shift to a more, let's call it greedy, Life or Focus Blast Hidden Power Ice set, then Hippodon suddenly becomes a lot better, or better enough to the point where its win rate goes from 60 to 70%. And that's quite the jump in win rate, and pretty good. A bit surprised about Polito's win rate. I don't really like Rain nowadays, but it's okay. Rain, I don't think it's particularly good, but one, you probably how do I describe this? All right, so you're playing in SPL. Most of your opponents will be scout freaks. They will scout you in all of the last 10 tournaments you played. That's completely deranged to me, but they will do it. And if they see you have never brought rain, you can be absolutely sure they will notice and will do something about it. And so the strategy often is to at least bring rain at least once throughout a season, just to keep your opponent honest. There's a couple other things, the other mons slash styles that work like this, but rain is probably the main one that you will see this apply to. And so you can stay sure that most players in SPL will at least bring rain once, no matter how bad they may think rain is, or how how they feel about rain's spot in the meta. As long as rain is at least vaguely viable, someone will bring it. And so that explains the usage, but the win rate is also, I wouldn't say inflated by the way the tournament works, but it sure gives it a boon for sure. Because if you play 15 games in a row with rain on high ladder, let's say, you will really struggle to crack a 50% win rate as long as you are about the same skill level as your opponents. If they're bringing also good teams. But in a best of one environment where you can rule out certain things, you can tailor your team, your rain team a little bit more for your opponent, then suddenly rain becomes much more potent because there's a couple of techs that are great against some teams for rain and make them way worse against others. And you can also go for other techs that don't work in the meta at large over a high number of games, but if you reduce the number of games, like in best of one SPL, then all of these techs work in your favor to the point where rain becomes good enough again, and that's this is exhibit A. Politoed is one of these monsters, or rain teams in general work like this. The same kind of goes for Scissor, beyond the fact that it's often used in Rain nowadays, but even something like Life Force Worse than Caesar, who we have seen win a couple of games this SPL comfortably, it's kind of in the same boat. It's not always a solid pick in any given game, but in a best of one environment, when you are trying to do a certain thing with your team, then fantastic pick. Also, some players are really, really weak to Scissor. We've seen it this right this SPL. Brian loaded into Scissor and got nuked by Scissor basically, and that's just because his team was weak to Scissor. The player often is kind of weak to Scissor, depending obviously on a billion things. And so you can look into this kind of stuff and create a team with Scissor that's good enough into your opponent and sees it best of one. That's the smart thing to do. And that gives Scissor a decent win rate, decent usage and decent win rate. Whereas if you look at something like the viability rankings, which puts Scissor against the meta at large and have to kind of average the sets, then Scissor maybe doesn't look as compelling of a mon to bring in general. Again, this is a sample size thing, or rather how few games there are, and include stuff that doesn't doesn't translate one to one to the meta at large, and so that makes Caesar a much more potent pick. And just like Politoed, or just like Hippodon even, and so that explains in part why these monsters are so much more successful in tournaments in general, over ladder, or at least over like in best of one environments, even best of three though, tech for sure. In general, they're better tournament picks than say ladder picks, and even then you have to use them sparingly because they're very weak to a lot of other meta staples, but they're very strong into a certain subset of meta staples. And so if you manage to load them into the meta staples they're good against, then you get a lot of mileage out of them. Conversely, Skarmory, I don't know, I think Skarmory is a very good mon and should probably be top 10 even here, but I can see why. Look at this top 10. It's not the worst for Scamry, right? You love his face of Escadrille, you set up on Ferroton kind of freely, but not always. There are some caveats. Jirachi you don't care about unless it's mixed, which, well, you can scout it and you have other stuff. I'm strictly speaking about physical defensive Scamry. Special defensive, I don't think anyone has used it. Maybe someone, but usually you want Scam set. We used to run special defensive leftovers always by default. Nowadays, with the optimization of offensive threats and how teams play, it's usually preferable to run physical defensive with a Rocky helmet. One, Escadrille is a massive headache. It's a headache even with max defense Rocky helmet, but at least you block the main spinner of the tier, and you wouldn't block the other one anyway if you were special defensive. And the other one, at least, is much easier to kill, or at least to chip, right? Starmie doesn't take like actually takes 2% damage from rocks and doesn't take sounded damage, and in fact is often run with leftovers, whereas Starmie is often not leftovers, very rarely recover, in fact almost never, and so it's usually you can outlast a Starmie with a Skarmory. And against army teams, especially Skarmory with max defense, very strong pick. They often have a Dragonite and or a Conkeldurr, and you don't need spikes against those teams. You just need a Skarmory to wall the main offensive physical threats, and then you let Sun and your offensive threats to do the rest. Gliscor has fell off quite a bit. I wasn't too impressed with its performance in this tournament. Not probably a function again of the metagame getting so offensive and so optimized. And so I understand why it went, went so poorly. Uh, you cannot. It used to be very good in the more, let's say, slower meta, right? When it's just you can just knock off freely or use them freely to get a big threat in, but those days are gone, man. Sad. And with Seasons Wars Dance Gliscor, those seem pretty okay to me. Same as always. Nothing like nothing meta defining, meta shattering. They're just nice to have sometimes. And also, 41% might look horrible, but as you can see, it's like it went like 5-7, which I mean, okay. One game that one slightly different game and it's 50%. Same goes for Camry. So again, you shouldn't look at these win rates too closely. Not crazy performance, wow. 72%? Nice. Garchomp fell off. Reuniclus mega fell off. Wow, like 20%? Right. Reuniclus' big win set has always been the Calmine one, right? But then a lot of people now feel that it is too slow nowadays and it doesn't really fare well into the meta, which is absolutely correct. And so a lot of people try to run the other set, the more offensive sets. Those are fine, they work, but they're not good. Or rather, they're not bad either, but they're not the ticking time bomb that is defensive Calm Mind Reuniclus. And that means, yeah, you can run them, you can maybe even do well with them, or deal decent damage with them, but I don't know. There's just something about the set that doesn't win. Let's see, we're kind of the low usage tier here. Jellicent, I mean, Jellicent is always the same one, right? You run it to spin block. And usually you pick between spin blocking Starmie or Excadrill. And even Excadrill or spin block like twice, maybe if you're good at the game. And yet, look at this win rate. Although again, it's 9 games. So not really super telling. Thunderous very low usage. A lot of people will tell you that they will never run Rain without Thunderous, but SPL players clearly disagree with this statement by using way more Polito than Thunderous. Well, way more. It's 3 more games, but it's a lot in SPL. Here we have a bunch of random offensive slash defensive threats, but they mostly map to what we talked about earlier. Like Clef, same kind of teams as Hippodon is on. So it's those defensive builds, Slowbro. This one is not good. I don't know how it managed to get used 6 times. That's insane. Okay, so here's the thing: a lot of black and white players, and some who played in SPL especially, think Conkeldurr is a bit of an overbearing presence in the tier. And so if you have that issue, Slowbro solves all of your problems. Slowbro walls Conkeldurr forever and ever. It's also an okay pick against the teams in general where you find Conkeldurr, which is hyper offense. And it's an okay stop against some of these more used threats as well. Maybe not a full stop, but at least annoying enough to them, right? Landorus, Excadrill, like Jirachi if it doesn't have a special move. All of this, Dragonite, of course, like it's also a decent Terrakion stop, right? So Slowbro has a niche, but I think the niche is so narrow, and Slowbro is a hard one to fit on a team because it it wants like 10 moves to function properly. You can do with just a slack of Ice Beam, say, but then you want like here's the problem. You want slack off, that's non-negotiable. And then one, you want Psychic for Conkeldurr, or you lose that 1v1 a lot of times, which not something you want to see, obviously. That's why load Slowbro. And then you kind of want Scald, usually, because burn is good, especially if you snag one on something like a Ferrothorn or other Switchings. And then you usually want Ice Beam for Garchomp, Landorus, Therian, Dragonite, because you're supposed to check these. You can make do with just Psychic against some of those, but it makes your job way harder. You need to really position yourself perfectly to make it work without Ice Beam against the big offensive threats. And so you usually want Ice Beam, and that's your Slug of 3 attacks, mom with 230 special attack, which let's say it's not ideal. And you're completely stonewalled by a couple of the ones that are a little bit higher. Celebi, especially Rotom Wash is very annoying. Ferrothorn, if you don't have a fire move, just switches in and I mean you can try to burn it, but you're flipping coins at that point. Oh, without Ice Beam too, Gliscor can 1v1, which is maybe the saddest thing ever. And if you want to run a different set, say Flamethrower, where do you slot it? Over Scald? I guess. It's probably your best bet, but losing Scald is very unfortunate because Fervor exists. It can also Rotom Wash. You cannot burn it anymore, which makes it unbeatable for you. Not that Skull beats it, but it's something. Latias, low usage. Conkeldurr, low usage, but it won more than it lost, so nice. Brennan didn't perform at all. Zapdos somehow won 2 games out of 3. I don't even remember when it was used, but okay, go Zapdos. Xatu, same. I mean, these monsters are extremely fringe at this point. There's not much to talk about here. Maybe Tentacruel is the one that's a bit more surprising that it's so low in usage, but it's been on a downward spiral for a while. Right. And so now we move to another thing that I wanted to look at because this shit is very nice. Right. This one. What's what do we learn from this? That Starmie has balloon a lot less than it used to. For once, it used to be almost 100%. Now it's only what 66%, 19 out of 29. Bit higher, in fact, like 70 something percent. Escadrille mostly leftovers, but a lot of non-leftovers as well. Okay, wait. Let's first look at Starmie's items because this is probably the one that most people expect the least. So we have 19 balloons. We have 3 leftovers, 2 rocky helmets, And then it's a bunch of one-use items. I remember. Oh, not all have been revealed. I know that Finch used a Tangaberry Starmie on his rain team that he brought twice, so that would be all, right? Because that's 19. No, there's one other missing revealed. Oh yeah, Harshest used the Choice Starmie week one specs, I believe. He also posted about it on the forums, and yeah. Okay. Escadrille most leftovers normal, like classic. Landorus, Landorus maybe is another interesting one. It used to be that most were just leftovers, right? And there were a couple Scarf ones, but when the meta slows down, you don't want Scarf Landorus because this one doesn't do anything against bulky bills if you are scarfed. And so, and two, when you run Scarf Landorus, it means you need to find another Stealth Rock Mon, and that's very annoying for most teams that want a Landorus. I think if we just scroll down a little bit, we'll find more information on Landorus. Or not. Okay. Nobody knows what what the other 27 Landros have used. We may never know. A lot of choice card though, that's for sure. And a couple of, say, Yacheberry or Kustab. At least a couple of Kustab berries, that's guaranteed. Not sure if they're revealed and they're down here, but yeah. Celebimos lefties, Hippodon 2, Gliscor. It says 11 with 12 users. I've assumed that one of them never hit the field because there's no way anyone used anything else. Dragonite, only 10 lefties. I mean, a little bit more than half. I think this is the right one. Leftover Dragonite was a big fad. I mean, it's great. Mind you, don't get me wrong, but I never was a fan of the 100% usage of leftovers on Dragonite. That's just uh, I never got it. I never understood it. I think 50% lefties, 50% Yache slash Lam are a bit better in general. Andrus most all Andrus was leftovers. I mean, some people experiment sometimes with say choice, but uh, yeah, you want lefties usually. Tyranitar says only 8 Berry. Truth is that there's probably at least 3 times that. It's just nobody has clicked a 5 move on Tyranitar. Heatran, only half of them were Balloon, which that's also a bit of a change. They used to all to be Balloon. I don't. We've seen one specs I remember from Gary, and I don't remember the rest. I assume at least a couple leftovers. Oh, 5 leftovers. So we have 8 balloon, 5 leftovers, 1 specs, not sure if it's revealed down here, and then 2 unrevealed. Okay, Mona used a scarf last week, so there's that guy too, and then one, I don't know, lost to the Sands of Time. Hmm. Not much else to talk about with item. Scarf Latios really fell off, man. But do we have? Wait, okay. uh, Latios is the most used mon, and yet in the Pokemon Plus item usage stats, the first one you find is Scarf Latios. Okay, Scarf Latios really did fall off. Don't like that's an observable fact. But the fact that this is the first time you see a Latios here is a testament to how versatile and strong the Pokemon is, right? Okay, at least double of. At least 6 definitely was Scarf, I would say. A lot of specs unrevealed, a lot of Colburberry unrevealed, but you cannot tell on preview what item Latios is most of the times. And so just like you don't see it here. Like even in game when you're playing, you don't always know what item Latios is carrying, and usually you only figure it out after it has attacked at least once or twice even. Sometimes you just cannot know unless okay, specs is obvious. You switch in your Jirachi, it takes 50%. Okay, you're like, okay, this guy specs, fine. But if it does non-specs damage, is it Scarf, is it Colbuberry, is it something else? We've seen all sorts of stupid items. Shout out Brinketios with the Reflect Rocky helmet set, yeah. Right, all of these just... It could also be, I don't know, like Coal Mine Lamberry. No, I will not abbreviate it like Monai does. No, 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 no. That's not YouTube friendly. And also, it's not funny. Mm, okay. Is there no Alakazam here? No, because you cannot never know. You can never know the Alakazam item unless you break the sash, which it doesn't seem to have happened. Although we have seen at least one. Okay, Colburberry, White Hair, one specs, one Col. I mean, definitely more than this for at least choice specs and Colburberry. White Hair probably only one use. Yeah, this is the weakness of this kind of stats. They since they get combined, I assume automatically they just don't know unless the item gets procced, which doesn't always happen. And choice items, especially, unless they get tricked, say, or knockoff, you don't just know. Or even Alakazam. 20 Alakazam uses, there's only one in the Pokemon Plus item usage stats, which is one Sash Zam. For sure, more than one of the 20 Alakazams were Sash, but most. You need to trigger Sash, which only happens if you go from 100% to 0, which happens, which is kind of easy to do with Alakazam, but a lot of people just don't let their Alakazam do this unless they need a crucial revenge kill. And so, yeah. Same goes for Pokemon like Kieran Black. Almost invisible in this. It only appears down here with one item here, one item, one and one. It's kind of the same as um, the Latios strength, right? Kieran Black could be running anything, any set, any item, and you don't know until you know, and that's often too late. Whereas something like Rotom, Orlando, even, or even Ferrothorn, they're mostly confined to or two items, or Excadrill, or Starmie, even. Whereas Kieran Black, Latios, they're all quite strong users of anything they want. Item user says not much to talk about here. Yeah, Black Sludge on poison types, sure. 13 life orbs, nice. That's decent. Way more, by the way. Again, same problem. Most of these, like at least half of these are like a life orb, but there's zero here, and I assume these get compiled from this column. So moves usage stats. This is maybe the more interesting one. U-turn rocks, hidden power. This move should be banned, by the way. This is my nuclear take. Not banned. It just shouldn't exist. It should have been removed from GSC, starting from GSC onward. Gen 8 had the right idea to remove this stupid move. Gen 6 also had a good idea to nerf it, but I think it just shouldn't exist. And I think that the simple fact that it's top 3 in black and white of all, of all gens, I think it's mental. Like, seriously? The third most used move in the game is a move that every single monk can run to cover from the weaknesses they were designed for. This I don't like Red Power. Rocks, I don't super like rocks either, but I begrudgingly accept them. U-turn, U-turn is technically also broken, but um, I don't think anyone wants to ban a U-turn ever. Not sure why, but okay. Oh, but look, there's a my favorite column misses out of how many uses? 51 6 misses deserved, 35 9 deserved, focus blast 13 misses, 18 hit, which means 18 hits, yeah, deserved. Power weight 27 6 deserved. These are all deserved misses. That's all I can say, man. How did four out of 14 stone edges only one miss, man? What? And same with Wisp, 13-1. This move has 75% accuracy, and he missed once out of 13 uses. Gee, no wonder people spam Rotom Wash, they just never miss Wisp. This is all clear state to me now. Thunder missed only once, but I would hazard that most of these were in range, so it doesn't really matter. Fire Blast, okay, Storm, Star Slide, Dragon Tail. Healing Wish only 7 times used. That's a bit low, it feels like, but we've seen Latias very little usage. So, and Jirachi has high usage, but we've reached the point where Jirachi is more valuable in an endgame scenario than whatever it could heal. So we often see Jirachi outlive the stuff he's supposed to healing Wish. That's pretty funny, but I guess it's also a result of how the Pokemon works. Pokemon Plus movies as such, I mean, these are all obvious, right? Your turn, yeah, obviously. The Meteor, wow. Spikes, sure. Your turn, Crunch plus Combat, wow. I mean, Ferrothorn is the only one that appears so often in the top 10. Or, in fact, the only one that appears 3 times in the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. It speaks to the versatility of this mod, right? You can spike, you can body whip, you can leash seed, often all of three in the same game, and your opponent is sad. Uh, Landorus using Earthquake more than Stealth Rock. This is another thing to notice, and it's mostly because. Yeah, I remember when we've seen play Landorus. Fakes used it, I believe, and they didn't hit anything worth hitting, but it's a funny tech. I give this a 8 out of 10 in the funny scale, which is what matters. A lot of Landorus, as I was saying earlier, a lot of Landorus moved away from Scarf and moved towards Scarf rather, away from the leftovers max speed set. And this is why this year you see U-turn. Well, okay, U-turn you will always spam throughout the game, but more Earthquake than Stealth Rock. I'm not sure I'm not sure that's how it usually goes. I would expect in many older tournaments to for rocks to have way higher usage than Earthquake on Landorus. Maybe not way higher, but definitely at least 2 or 3 more uses. Because a lot of games, your Landorus is just rocks and response U-turn, sometimes HP Ices, something like a Dragonite or enemy Landorus, right? But we've seen so many Scarf Landorus that you often go for an Earthquake Revenge Kill or Earthquake Endgame, and obviously a lot less Stealth Rock as a result. I want to see Rotom Wisp. Okay, so we have seen, what, 19? 13 Wisp uses, of 10 of which were from Rotom, and the only miss. So Rotom Wash has a 90%. I had a 90% hit chance with Wisp this tournament, but conversely, is this 80%? No, this is way lower. Like 66%. I don't want hit rate, but 90% Wisp, so that's fine. 8 Magma Storm, 1 miss. I hate this so much, man. Like, oh, sorry, I forgot that there's my model in the way. Right, so people really just click the 75% accuracy moves and they don't miss, huh? One and two, they missed one out of eight. Like, they missed two out of 18. That's 10%. Except both of these are 75% accuracy. Toxic missed more than. Toxic was a third of the time and missed exactly as many times, despite having 15% more accuracy. And yeah, the Mons is Mons, I guess. Fantastic. That's just what you want to see. Really outplayed people when you load Etran and click Magma Storm randomly and never get punished. You should love it. Alright, all of these are fringe moves, and the rest is kind of expected. Uh, Let me see one sec. Oh yeah, the last thing. What was I saying earlier about Celebi? That we've seen a lot less specially defensive Celebis, and I think it's exemplified by um, the prevalence of hidden power usage. Usually, you don't have a slot for hidden power on the defensive set. You want recover button pass rocks and a stab move, but when it's got hidden power, it's usually nasty plot, and that's offensive, and so out of 15 Celebes, 9 had hidden power, which suggests that 9 had nasty plot. Uh, let's say 8 because someone felt frisky and just ran hidden power on a defensive one. But yeah, that is a interesting thing to note for the usage stats fans out there. Ah man, it's almost been 1 hour already. Wow. Did I enjoy this SPL season? No, not at all. But I'm not playing, so that's fine. Just I don't know. It's not that the metagame. I've seen some people say, "Oh wow, Black and White has so little creativity," and then I see some other people who go like, "Wow, Black and White has so much creativity," and the discrepancy usually is because the monsters are usually quite often same. Like if you just take the top 15 year, you get like 90% of the games are encapsulated in the top 15 year. If you cut off a Glasgow, so it's top 18. But the creativity doesn't lie in which mons you use, but rather in the way you tech these mons to beat some matchups. And and this loops back to my argument about why Polytoad and Scizor have way higher win rate that you would expect if you looked at the VRs or if you played them even just on ladder for a while. You'd be like, wow, Rain really does suck. And the problem is not that Rain sucks, it's just that Rain really needs the text to hit for it to win. And it's much easier to one, tech your Rain team, two, tech it to win specific matchups you're expecting when you're playing a tournament with prep, especially one as heavy-handed prep like the Smogon Premier League. Yeah, that's it really. There's not much else to talk about here. All right, I think that's just how it is. Let's put it that way. And that's it. See you next time.